Welcome to another Pint with Seaniebee. Today I have a great guest, a guy called Tadhg O'Donoghue. He spent much of his life as a partner at the very top of PwC in Ireland. He was responsible for inward investment. He's from a very remote island in Ireland off the coast, southwest coast. He'll talk to us a little bit about what it was like growing up there without electricity and how he used to have to get to school by boat. Very smart fella, and a guy who's got great advice and wisdom and points of view. He's not afraid to be outspoken like most people from the Kingdom of Kerry. Kerry is a place where half my family comes from and is a unique and powerful part of Ireland. We talk a lot about Gaelic football on the podcast as well, so those of you who don't know what that is have a bit of a treat in store there. Again, thank you all for all your likes and tweets and support and messages. We're on a bit of a roll now and audiences are building, so thank you very much for that. Please keep sharing and, if possible, commenting on iTunes about what you think of the podcast, even if you think it's shit. Okay, without further ado, I give you the great Tadhg O'Donoghue, Kerryman. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Is this your first time on a podcast?
Probably is, actually. I've done interviews and stuff, but I've done live radio. Okay. But I'm not sure about a podcast.
Right. It's the new fandangle thing on the internet. It means I don't have to go on RTE.
You know the story about being outspoken. You know the Kerryman who thought he had the inferiority complex. He thought he was the same as everybody else.
We have a lot of listeners from overseas, so we need to explain to them a little bit about Kerry. And I also am interested in talking to you about what life was like in Ireland when you were growing up back in the day.
Well, you see, I grew up on an island, Valentia Island, off the coast of Kerry. We participated in every sport, provided it was Gaelic football.
Okay, we need to stop there. Gaelic football, for those of you who don't know, is the national sport of Ireland. There's two, Gaelic football and hurling. They're a little bit like a cross between soccer and rugby and Australian rules football. And Kerry are the masters of Gaelic football. The sport is broken out by county. There's 32 counties, and Kerry usually wins.
Yes, Kerry have contested 50% of the last finals in the last century.
I never knew that.
50% of the finals. The trick question is, which county has lost the most finals? Kerry, because they've been in the most.
They've won the most and lost the most.
And lost the most, yeah. So we've won 37, and I think we've lost 18.
My God. It's an amateur sport. It's the fulcrum of society and village life. Probably the most watched sport in Ireland, and I used to play it when I was a kid as well.
Yeah.
What part of Kerry are you from?
Valentia Island, an island off the coast of Kerry.
Yeah.
We say Ireland is an island off the coast of Valentia, but I grew up on the island when it was a real island, no bridge. You had to get the boat to go to the mainland. We grew up on a dairy farm. We didn't have electricity in those days even. We didn't even have a landline. You had to go down to the post office to make a phone call. Okay. It was really rural.
Was it Gaelic speaking?
Partly Gaelic speaking, partly English speaking.
Right.
The living there was either farming, and we were dairy farmers, or fishing. They were the two big industries.
So how many cows would your father have had?
My father had, I think he had only about 20, because they had to be hand-milked.
Yeah.
We didn't have electricity. Yeah. My brother now, who farms, because the electricity, has 90 cows.
Yeah. And would you be one of the main providers of milk for the island?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And exported to the mainland, to the creamery, who then exported the cream to wherever to be processed in places like Cork and Dublin.
So Valentia Island is like, I mean, it was wild there, right? Because it gets a battering from the Atlantic. Yeah.
When you get the battering from the Atlantic, straight in, southwest wind, the real cold one would come in March, you get from the northwest.
Yeah. So you went to school on the island as well?
School, national school on the island, secondary or high school as you would call it in America on the mainland. I went to St. Brendan's College, Killarney, which was a boarding school. Right. And the main reason for going to boarding school was because we were an island and you couldn't be in the ferry every day.
Yeah.
Although lots of lads did.
Did they really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, came in.
Lots of lads cycled to the ferry, got on the ferry, cycle another 3 miles to the town of Carsavine, and cycle back again that evening.
Be fit.
Oh yeah.
Carsavine's a lovely town.
Carsavine is a mile long. It has one main street running the whole town.
Up the main street, down the same street.
Down the same street, yeah.
So, try and give my listeners a view of what is special about being from Kerry, about Kerry people.
Because we were the southwest corner of Ireland, away from any motorway or anything, we were self-sufficient, so we knew we had to make our own way.
Yeah.
And I think that made us all the better.
And but was it, like back in the day, was it scary coming up to Dublin?
No, we didn't. We had no fear of Dublin.
Right.
But then we'd been in Dublin many times for matches.
Yeah, of course. Beating them.
The famous ghost train.
Yeah.
Left Carsavine at midnight.
Wow.
Got into Dublin at maybe 8 or 9 in the morning. These were pre-diesel trains. These were steam trains.
Yeah.
Run by turf, and if the turf was wet, be all night, and it was known as the ghost train.
So this would be all the guys from Kerry, and it's probably the farthest train journey in Ireland.
Yeah.
Even today it would take probably 5 hours, would it, by train, or 4?
Probably. I think Killarney takes 4 hours.
Yeah.
And we are another further hour and a half beyond Killarney.
Yeah. And these trains will be coming up on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, usually, in time for all the fans from Kerry to get to Croke Park, which is the Gaelic headquarter stadium in Dublin, and they'd all go watch the game, which would probably kick off at about 2:00 in the afternoon, and then they'd probably go back that night. Would you?
Go back that night, but some people made it. No matter who played in the final, they booked the final every year to come up for a long weekend.
But you're half the time you'd be in it.
Yeah, half the time. So it wasn't a big guess to know to pre-book.
How many did you go to?
Oh, I've been at pretty well every final since I was about 15.
Have you really?
Oh, yeah.
So does this become like a thing at some point? Like you go, I've never missed one. I can't miss them now.
It is, yeah. Or you'd never. The only reason you'd miss one is you were in hospital or something. Then you would miss it.
And like, do you have no problem getting tickets?
There's always a problem with tickets, but they come. Eventually, we managed to get tickets.
So you came to Dublin to study?
Came to Dublin to do commerce.
UCD? So what was UCD like back then?
It was still a small university.
Right.
Education was still way behind.
Yeah.
In my day, I was the only person from my primary national school to go to university.
What did the rest of them do? Went into the land?
They went working. A lot of them gave up school at 14 or 15 and went labouring.
Do you still know some of them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Still know some of them. They were very keen on the building trade. So anywhere there was building going on, you found those lads working.
Brilliant.
They were the days before the mechanised building. Digging drains, digging foundations, yeah.
I had a very funny story once when I was in the Spaniard in Kinsale, which is in the neighbouring county of Cork, which they don't get on, the two of them, but anyway, they're both beautiful counties to go to. And this guy came in to me, and he walked up to me in the pub, and he said he was 6'7", and he'd just come in from labouring or something.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "Are you some class of immediate?"
Yeah.
Which I suppose I am. And then he held out his hand to shake my hand. It was like shaking hands with a shovel. And he said, "I build walls."
Yeah.
Can't come back from that.
No, you build walls.
And he was one of those guys who did dry walls. He was one of the last remaining
stone dry walls.
These are the walls that you see in
which is coming back again, by the way.
It is, of course, trendy now. Yeah.
It's very trendy now to build a dry stone wall.
When you see pictures, anyone from overseas, the old pictures of the west of Ireland, you see all these walls sectioning off fields, and the way they were built was that the field would be full of stones, and these guys would come in and take the stones out of the fields to make them tillable or grazable by cows, and then they'd take the stones and then they'd make them into these walls that would then section off the fences for farming, and they last forever. They don't fall down, and there's no cement. They're just how to place each one on top of the other. Dry
stone wall. Yeah.
So how was commerce?
Commerce was good in those days. We decided, look, we would study each lecturer and we would guess what came up in the commerce exam, and we were usually 90% right.
And that part of commerce, guessing what's going to happen.
Even if we disagreed with what he was saying, we gave him back his own version. We didn't take any chance of disagreeing with the lecturer in an examination.
Right.
We gave him his own muck back.
Did you have fun?
Oh, we did, yeah.
Yeah.
We had fun because we had football, and we had dancing was a huge thing in those days, and
Yeah.
every faculty had its dances
Yeah, yeah.
once a week.
What was Dublin like then?
It was a bicycle city. There were bicycles everywhere.
Right.
You could nearly say we're the pre-motor car age.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you went in, no matter where you looked in the morning, you saw crowds cycling to work.
Is that right?
My God, how the world has changed.
What was it like in terms, was it dirty or?
Very. The streets were not clean like they are today. Everything was thrown on the ground.
Right.
Cigarettes, matches, it was all there on the footpath.
Right.
If you were in a corner outside a pub, you couldn't see the ground. It was covered with fags and
Really?
matches and paper and yeah.
And the smog as well, was a lot of smoke?
Smog, yeah. There was one or two really bad ones. I remember one we came out of a cinema and could not see the other side of the street.
Right. It's amazing. It's amazing, I suppose, looking at Dublin now, at how sophisticated it has become.
Oh yeah.
Versus back then, because that wasn't that long ago. I mean, 40 years ago.
I came to Dublin in 1959.
Yeah.
So that's what 56 years ago.
Yeah.
The entertainment in Dublin for us was dances. Parnell Square had, I think, about 8 dance halls.
Right. And the cinema.
And the cinema.
Savoy.
Sunday night you had to book a cinema. There were queues outside the cinemas.
Right.
And there were ticket touts, because if you didn't have a ticket and you went in, you could buy a pair of tickets off a tout.
Right.
That doesn't happen anymore. It was just a different culture.
Yeah. Because the difference even between Dublin and Valentia Island would have been vast even back then. Did you get homesick being up in Dublin?
No, because we were probably near enough to home, you see.
Yeah.
You couldn't do a weekend now because when you were working, because work was always 5.5 days in those days.
Right.
So you didn't finish work until 1 o'clock on the Saturday.
No
So
time to
really
get
you
back.
couldn't go as far as Valentia and back.
You'd have to take a day off.
You had to take a day off.
Right.
But we weren't homesick.
Right.
Telephones were away in the dark age. Communication was by letter. Even in secondary school, I would write home every week, and my mother would write back to me every week in boarding school. Those were the days. That was the days, and it was a problem in farming. You're there, say, mowing hay, and something happens to the machine. You need a part, and you know where to get it in Tralee, but you've got to call Tralee, and then it's going to be maybe another day before that part arrives.
Yeah.
Today you pick up the mobile phone and
Amazon brings it to you.
and the equivalent of FedEx brings it
within hours.
In an hour.
I know. And your first job out of commerce was in the tax department?
In the tax department, yeah.
Now, I hear, so this would have been around Lamass and all that coming in and trying to clean up the act.
Lamass was Taoiseach. In those days, in the eve of elections, there would be major rallies in Dublin. But I remember Lamass speaking in 1961, talking about joining Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really so far ahead of his time.
Yeah. I mean, this is a time when Ireland gained its independence in 90. It became the Republic of Ireland in the 1922-26. And so the country was only finding its feet because the British had left, and so you had to find hospitals and civil service and tax and get a country running.
Oh yeah, get the country running, and that was a huge task. And the scientific quality of farming was way behind. I remember around 1960 the average yield of a cow was about 500 gallons. My brother wouldn't keep a cow unless it was well north of 1,000 gallons.
Wow. This was a time when the Northern Ireland was still, as it is today, part of Great Britain. And was there any parallels with the? I'm a big fan of Greece, and I know one of the biggest problems with Greece is people don't pay their taxes properly. It's all under the table, and
there was quite the amount of that. But tax evasion was never an industry, I think, in Ireland. Okay. I mean, I worked in the revenue for 10 years.
Yeah.
Of course, there was evasion.
Yes.
But it wasn't an industry like it might be in Greece.
Was there a sense that people understood we were building a new country and that we had to pay tax. Was there sort of a national pride as well?
There was by those who didn't pay tax, but those who paid tax were trying to pay less tax. Same everywhere, isn't it? I mean,
how come you didn't spend all your? Because a lot of people who go into the civil service, it's the old job for life. What made you decide to leave?
I got a phone call one day from a guy in what's now PwC. He was a partner there, and he said, we have put a big advertisement in the paper last week and you didn't reply to it. Oh, I said, I looked at what you were looking for. I said, you're looking for the impossible. Oh, no, so see, we think you'd be a reasonable candidate. He knew me. And I said, okay. And he said, would you come up for an interview? I said, okay. And he says, come to the office. Oh, no, I'm not going to the office. I said, sure. If I stand in your reception and somebody from the revenue sees me, they'll know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm doing very nicely in the revenue, thank you.
Yeah.
So we met in a hotel and we did the deal there and then.
Were you just around 30 then?
I was 32.
Right. And married?
Married, yeah.
Right.
And that was another challenge because now you're going from absolute security in the civil service to the unknown.
So back then it was, what was the name of it? Grant Thornton?
Craig Gardner's.
Craig Gardner's, right. So it was an accountancy firm.
It was the leading accountancy firm in Dublin.
Right. Mainly auditing.
Mainly auditing.
Auditing books.
But they needed some tax. Tax consulting was in its infancy.
Yes.
But the accounting firms actually got into it pretty fast. With the result is that tax consulting over all those years has been the province of accountants rather than legal people.
Yes.
Whereas if you come to the States, it's the legal people mostly, I think.
That's right. And PwC bought them then, did they? Or
no, there was just a
merger.
International companies started to come. I was probably partly involved. I'd come to the US twice a year to talk to the big companies and saying, you need to get to Europe. And if you want to get to Europe, Ireland is where you should get to.
Right. The early history was we were still a very agricultural country.
And if you look at 1960, I can tell you, in the national statistics, the export of cattle on the hoof and immigrants' remittances were two huge items in the economy. Yeah. The English buyers had come over to the Dublin cattle market in Prussia Street was a huge thing.
And they bring them over on the boat?
Drive them down to the North Wall, actually on foot, put them on the boat. Boat would unload at Holyhead. Buyers would lorry them into wherever.
Yeah.
Now, of course, very little goes on hoof now. It's processed in Ireland.
Yeah.
That just tells you one of the things we have done.
Yeah. But talk to me about your proactivity, because I can understand if an American company is thinking of going to Ireland and you're advising them, but you were also proactively trying to get.
Oh yeah.
So what was the thinking behind that?
These companies need to be in Europe as well as in North America. It's no good in doing the stuff in North America and transporting it across the Atlantic to Europe.
Yeah.
We had three things going for us. We were in the European community.
Yes.
We spoke the English language, and American companies actually to this day find it difficult to deal with non-English languages.
They do.
We early on decided tax would be a big carrot, so we went for low corporate taxes.
Which we still have to this day. Yeah.
So those were the three carrots. Secondly, then you had to not guess, but you had to project in your mind the companies that Ireland would be suitable for.
Yes.
And quickly, it didn't take long to figure out anything with bulk transport, forget it.
Yeah.
Don't go there. Communications, technology, pharma, and we went for those the big way.
And Coca-Cola concentrate.
Coca-Cola concentrate went there.
That was one of the biggest exports for many years out of Ireland.
Oh yeah. That was huge.
And I think also my understanding of the history was Lemass's also, and maybe we're giving him too much credit, but around the time they said we may not be able to give jobs to all our people, so let's make sure we educate them well.
It was just as Lemass was finishing up as Prime Minister, or Taoiseach, free education came along. This utterly changed the landscape. And to this day, education is cheap. College fees, it depends on the faculty, but typically $1,500.
Yeah. I mean, nobody understands that in America. Who, if you go to college in America, they usually come out the other end with a 6-figure loan to pay off.
Yeah.
But in Ireland, it's free. Or, not quite free.
And we never went into the loan business.
No.
Our universities do not have as much residential as you would find, say, in North America.
Yeah.
You board out in boarding houses, and the word we used was digs.
Yeah.
These were ladies who kept people full board 7 days a week.
Yeah. It's very quaint. It's like Airbnb today.
It's like Airbnb today, yeah.
There's no such thing as a new idea.
Yeah, it was. And those ladies, families, they relied on having 10 to 12 young men. No, they never mixed them. Sex was not allowed.
Right.
The women had their own. Some landladies went for women, other landladies went for the boys.
And very religious, of course, back then.
Oh,
Ireland,
yeah. Oh, very.
Yeah.
Oh, very.
Watching this firm grow and get into new areas, I'm now going into, I mean, when I was now growing up in the 80s, there was a mental recession hit Ireland, where unemployment shot up around 20% and stuff like that. What was your recollection of that time and what caused that?
What caused it is world economy. Ireland is like a straw in the wind. If the world economy is hurting, Ireland is really in pain.
Right.
If the world economy is flying, Ireland is even flying higher.
Right.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything we can do about it.
Really? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Except in the more recent recession, the big one was construction, and they're just overbuilt and overpriced.
Yeah.
But the ones that really didn't have a recession, pharma never has a recession. People still get sick.
Yes.
Technology,
There's
no
always
recession.
something new, yeah.
You know, I mean, if you buy the mobile phone that you bought 5 years ago, nobody will take it off you.
Correct. Yeah. Interesting. The and the company was growing and going gangbusters. So when did you get made partner? And that's a big deal, right?
Oh, big deal.
Yeah.
I was made partner I went in there in 73. I was made partner in 77.
That was good.
Well, I came in as a senior guy, I remember.
Yeah.
I was curious. I was just getting an offer for another firm for partnership. When I was just called in and said, we're thinking of making you a partner.
Maybe they saw you in reception.
I don't know. I don't know.
We were talking last night about my observation, which Ireland, for those listeners who may not know, had a crash like much of the world economy in 07, 08, 09, 10, mainly driven by, I would say, greed, house prices, and banks who, like in America's subprime situation, overlent and were giving money away.
Seriously overlent. So a lot of the banks in Ireland went bankrupt. Pretty much had to be rescued by the state, and a lot of older ancillary financial institutions got caught up in the mess. I was saying to you last night when we were drinking together, I don't remember much dirt surrounding PwC, which was quite laudable, because a lot of companies that were very well respected got caught with their pants down. Well, we were a conservative company. For instance, I as a partner could not have a single share in a client.
Right.
That was a given. Secondly, if I was involved in an outside business, that was a no-no. Yeah, our basic philosophy was, look, you're either a partner here full-time, 24/7 if need be, but if you want to run another business, fine, but out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about Iceland last night. You recall I was watching Michael Moore's new movie was very good, and he went to Iceland where there were only 4 or 5 banks. One of the reasons America came down was there were too many banks. Canada only has a few banks as well, so the less banks you have, the more easy.
But Canada would be more conservative.
And much more conservative. But Iceland, 4 of the banks went belly up, and Iceland only has about 300,000 people.
Yeah.
Living there, but the one bank that didn't go down was the one solely run by women.
Yeah.
And the females executives who were interviewed said, if we don't understand it, we don't invest in it.
A very good principle. Because if you don't understand it, why are you putting your money on it?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, if you take all the Ponzi schemes,
yeah,
people didn't understand how these guys had made up. How could he be making all these returns?
Yeah.
And other experts couldn't even do half of it. Sure, there was red lights everywhere if they had just looked.
Yeah.
But you see, greed is a funny thing. We're all greedy.
Yeah.
And if you're getting a good return, why ask a question?
Yeah, exactly.
But you should.
You should.
Because you don't understand why you were getting a good return.
The other contentious issue I wanted to get your point of view on was when Iceland went down, they kind of went tough luck to the investors who lost money with the bonds.
Yeah.
Ireland took another tack and said, no, we'll guarantee your losses. And that really was what crippled, in hindsight, the economy.
Yeah.
Where do you lie on that line of thinking?
I myself think Ireland did the right decision, but for one thing, I think the bondholders weren't guaranteed, and they should have been left go. But depositors have to be guaranteed, because your typical depositor, money in the bank, how could it be safer? So he or she needs to be guaranteed.
Yes.
Particularly the vulture funds who have bought bonds, I wouldn't guarantee them. No, they should.
But they were guaranteed by our
partly eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
But they should have been burned.
Do you think we have learnt our lesson from that debacle?
You never, because the new lesson is different. You see, you learn the lesson as to why it happened and all this, but remember, the next crash will have no bearing on what happened before. It will be some new reason.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the politicians say we're making sure it'll never again happen. Yeah. This is a poppycock. You can't be sure it will never again happen. And the reasons why it will happen will certainly not be the reasons the last one happened.
Yes, of course. Right around 2008 when Lehman went down.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole
Lehman was a big factor in the crash, because post-Lehman, no bank would lend to another bank.
Yeah.
The whole banking system is dependent on confidence.
Yes.
They lend to each other. To explain confidence, you take out $100 note there. It's only a piece of paper, but we are confident enough to know we will get $100 value for it. Yeah. But the real value is a piece of paper. Yes. And banking is like that. It's confidence.
Yeah. I met a guy here, because New York was, they thought the world was ending. And I met a guy from Citibank who actually, we were just in a pub, and he was really senior in Citibank, to the point where he said to me, I'm so senior, I'm not telling you who I am.
I see, yeah.
But he said, because I was asking these questions, and again, I'm stupid, I don't know anything about accountancy, I don't know anything about how money works, so I was asking just the kind of pleb on the street question to him. And he said, our shares have gone down to something like, I think they went down to something like $3, maybe even less, I can't remember. But
effectively, the shares crashed, yeah.
He said, just buy them again, they'll be back up around 18, 20 within a year, because what we'll do is, we've got our wrists slapped in the industry about doing that thing, and it's like a roulette wheel. We'll go off and play some other table game somewhere else, and no one will watch over us, and then we'll as you said, again. There'll be another thing go wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, if you take something like subprime, it should never have happened, and it will happen again. Subprime depended on guys selling loans to people who they knew couldn't repay.
Yeah.
And then they bundle that up in a bond with some government bonds and sell it to people around the world and get Standards and Poor and people like that to give it a AAA rating. Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
I don't understand why the rating agencies haven't been sued up to their eyeballs.
It seems like a racket.
Up to their eyeballs.
Yeah.
Because some of these bonds got a rating that they never deserved.
It feels like a kind of, you pay us enough and we'll keep you at the AAA or whatever.
Yeah. I'm kind of down on the rating agencies. They completely missed the boat.
So, Tadhg, one other thing I wanted to ask you was the thing that's happening now with inequality, and how, someone who's been close with finance and financial institutions and the rich getting richer, and Donald Trump's emergence and stuff like that. Where do you see that ending up?
It's very difficult to know what is true if you look at the United States. Middle-income people have had no real increase in 40 years. That can't go on. And the other point is they keep saying lower taxes will create jobs. There's actually no evidence whatsoever, no economic evidence, that lower taxes on the rich will create jobs.
And I mean, a social agenda, though. Do you think capitalism will turn a corner into that?
It probably will turn some corner. You see, capitalism is fine, but it has to have a social hand. You see, if you take, as Rumsfeld said, all Europe, yeah, we have high taxes, but we also have very good social benefits.
Yeah.
Particularly the unemployed, the sick, the schools, the colleges, they're all subsidised in the general taxation. And actually, people do buy into it.
Why don't countries like, I mean, the Scandinavian countries do this quite well, but their taxes are astronomical.
They're very high, yeah.
But why don't other countries try that?
Partly, I suspect, because people don't vote. If you take the city of Dublin, Sheriff Street used to be probably one of the poorest streets.
Yeah.
They didn't vote. So nobody went down there. No politician went down there to find out what they needed.
Yeah.
No, if they went out and voted, they'd all be down there trying to figure out what these people needed.
But there is rumblings. I mean, there's the Occupy Wall Street. There's the internet, the ability of the internet to galvanize people. I mean, do you see a time when, without using, it's a strong word, but, revolution happens?
Well, if it continued as it is in the low-tax countries for another generation, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Because the masses will eventually put down the foot in various ways.
Yeah.
I mean, in the US, they could stop paying property taxes and really cripple the system. Yeah. You see, if you take payroll taxes, they can't do anything there. That's taken off by the employer. And there's lots of taxes in the shop taken off by the shop. But there are lots of other taxes. You get your bill. And if you stop paying the bill, and you say, look, the reason I've stopped paying the bill is you're not doing A, B, C.
Yeah. There's an obedience, isn't there, as well?
There is. No real law, in my opinion, can work unless at least 90% of the population at least obey it.
Yeah.
They may not like it, but they will obey it. Yeah. It's not within the capacity of any state to force 30% of the population to do something that they really, really don't want to do.
Yeah. Okay, last question. What would you say to the young Tadhg O'Donoghue who was leaving Kerry and coming up to Dublin all those years ago, looking back? What lessons did you learn, and what would you say to yourself in terms of how you approach things?
I suppose it's still the old lesson that my mother and grandmother and father taught me: education, education, education. That's what I would say to young people: education, education, education. Yeah. That is far more valuable to them than anything you might leave in your will or whatever. That applies to life.
Tadhg O'Donoghue, thank you so much for taking time out to join me on A Pint with Seaniebee. It was great hearing from you. I was particularly enjoyed listening to your thoughts and observations about growing up in the olden days. It was fascinating to me. Best of luck, safe flight home, and I'll hopefully see you in Ireland sometime for a real pint in a pub.
Of course you will. And we might even take in a Kerry football match.
Take care.
Thanks.